Good morning, guys. Welcome to the morning ramble here at Homesteading Off the Grid. We've all had bad days, and we've all had a series of bad days. None of us are immune to this. I started my day kind of as a bad day today. But did you know the best way we can have a good day, even if we've already started having a bad day, is simply by starting our day over? You're like, well, how's that even possible? That doesn't even make any sense. Well, sure it does. I mean, and I Googled this to make sure. I Googled the definition of a day, and it's defined as a period of 24 hours or the amount of time, of course, it takes the Earth to rotate on its axis, one full rotation. It said that it's reckoned that it begins at midnight, but key word there, reckoned, common word here in the South, which kind of means to think, or it's a thought. It's not actually a fact, but it's a thought. But 24 hours, the amount of time it takes the Earth to rotate on its axis. That's what a day is. And so if you're having a bad day, and my thoughts, I'm going to tell you what's going on here with me, or what was, we can catch ourselves, we can stop, and we can say, okay, you know what? I'm in that point of stinking thinking. I'm not going to continue. I'm going to start my day over right now and get in a better spot. So here's what was going on with me. I get up this morning sometime before dawn. I get up, it's still dark when I wake up, even in the summer. I'm usually up before 5. I get my coffee, I go out on the front porch, I sit down where I always have my first cup of coffee, waiting for the daylight to come, and when it does, I can see my pond, and there's usually deer out there. So I sit down and I hear this sucking sound. Well, I know what that sucking sound is. It's when the pond is overflowing and the water is up above the top of the spillway pipe. And generally when this happens, it means the small dam at the end of my pond has overflowed and my lower field is full of water and possibly full of fish. This happens a couple times a year. It's happened a lot this year because this has been the rainiest year I ever remember in my life. So I'm thinking, oh great, my pond overflowed. I'm gonna have a field full of fish. I've got to go down there and get all these fish before the vultures do, before the crows, and I bet you the raccoons and the foxes have already been down there under the cover of darkness getting some of my fish. And I've got to rush off and go to work. I'm not gonna have time to do it. But I caught myself. First of all, I don't have that job anymore. I'm going to talk about that for just a second because there's a story I can tell you that kind of puts this together, starting our day over at any time we choose. So I start to calm down. I'm drinking my coffee. I'm starting to wake up. And I thought, and I've talked about this the last couple mornings on our morning ramble about beginning our days with an attitude of gratitude by making our gratitude list. So I said, okay, don't worry about the fish. Let's think about 5 things I'm grateful for. And of course, as you know, I always put family at the top. I never want to take it for granted. I put our health, our happiness at the top. That's always number 1 on my list, even though technically you're not supposed to repeat. You're supposed to find 5 unique things every day. But I talked about this yesterday and about how I will never take family, our health, our happiness for granted. Okay, so I'm thinking about my current situation, the fish in the field. And so I simply decided to rephrase this, and I remembered I don't have that job anymore. I'm not working there, and yeah, I'm grateful for that. So I realized I don't have to rush. I get to take my time, and that brought me around to the thought of I don't have to save my fish. I get to save my fish. This is a blessing. This is something to truly be grateful for. I'm 44 years old. We've had this place for 2 years, so I got it when I was 42. It was always my lifelong dream to have a place out in the country like this where I had enough space to breathe, and ideally where I had a pond or a river or some sort of body of water or waterway going through my property where I could have my own fish. Well, I have that today. I have a pond. It's not a big pond, but it's full of bluegill. It's got crappie. It's got largemouth bass. It's got a couple smallmouth bass. It's got catfish in it. One of them's almost 3 feet long. We put it in there last summer. I get to go out into my field and pick up these fish with my hands, touch them, feel them, save them, put them in the bucket, and then dump them back in the pond. And I don't always get them all. And if the waters were high enough last night, we had some flash flooding last night, some of them would have gotten washed away all the way through the field down a culvert, and they would have gone into a stream, which is down through the woods on the other side of the road. And that's fine with me because I know they're still alive. I prefer they be in my pond, but if I have to choose between they're in my pond or they're out there somewhere, but I know they're healthy and they're happy, then I would prefer that over knowing that they're dead. So that's number two. Number three, and this kind of ties in with number two, I'm grateful that I get to be here as the waters recede because I no longer have that job I didn't enjoy much, that I no longer have to go to. So I get to, at my leisure, sit on my porch, spend my time with my beautiful bride and my darling son, and every 30 minutes or an hour just say, well, the waters have receded a little bit more. Let's go see if there's any fish that I didn't see maybe last hour. So number four, if you've been following, and I'll put the video we made yesterday on the end of this one, along with the previous flood video so you can see what I'm talking about. But we're finally taking our garden spots back from the weeds. The weeds had piled up on us because of all the rain, because I was gone 8 to 12 hours a day with the job, 6 to 7 days a week. And because, as I shared yesterday, my wife, bless her heart, she was here a lot of the time, but it just wasn't the same for her to go out in the garden and work on the garden if I wasn't there with her. We're such a close, me, my wife, our son. It's like gosh, when he's in school, and we're here, we just pace for like the last couple of hours while he's in school, and all we do is talk about how quiet the house is, how empty it feels, how lonely it is. We enjoy our time together. We enjoy our time, the private time without him around at times, but if we're not complete, we don't feel whole. And I know a lot of you watching this can understand, and you can relate to that completely. So I'm going to hold off on number 5 for a minute, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about how we start our day over at any time so we can have a good day. Basically, I just kind of explained it to you. You catch yourself in your mode of stinking thinking, and you stop and you say, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to change my thoughts. I'm going to start over. And you can do it under almost any condition. And I'm going to share an example here with you. I mentioned I had a job. What was that job? Well, I was a city carrier's assistant for the United States Postal Service in Charlottesville, Virginia. And I had a lot of experiences, a lot of wonderful experiences for the 6 months I did this job. And I'm going to share an experience I had with you that kind of puts into a picture, a mental picture, these words I'm sharing with you about starting your day over at any time. I met a lot of wonderful people while I had this job. The biggest blessing of this job was meeting some of the people I met. And there's a mailman in Charlottesville. His name is Scott. We call him Scotty. And he's been doing this more than 30 years, even though he's one of these guys that has like a boyish baby face. He's 9 years older than me. He would be 53, but he doesn't look it. Scotty had been in the Marines in his youth, and he got out of the Marines, went to work with the post office. He's been there over 30 years. Scotty probably is not just one of the best mail carriers in Charlottesville, Virginia. He's probably one of the best mail carriers in the United States. And I'll probably never see him again, so I'm not trying to get brownie points for any reason. I'm telling you the truth. And here is some evidence of this proof. Scotty was on vacation a couple of months ago, and so we were all trying to cover his route. And Scotty had one of the longest routes in Charlottesville, and his route involved miles worth of walking, miles worth of what we call mounted, where he's delivering out of the truck, and it had several locations where he had to service apartment units or condos or townhouses, and you put the mail in the cluster boxes. And Scotty was very professional. He is very professional. He's still down there. His cluster boxes, I love doing his route as a fill-in assistant because his were meticulously numbered. They were clear. You knew exactly where that mail went. Scotty really cared about his customers, and so you could help him to the best of your ability when he was gone because he made sure to take care of his route. Very professional. So his route was so long, I couldn't finish it. I had it 3 days the week that he was on vacation. I don't know if I even got through half of it. And he had to stop at a high school. There were just all these different, it covered the conglomerate of any type of stop or service you had to provide as a mailman. It was on Scotty's route. Big packages you had to carry into these places. but I couldn't finish it. On the third day that I had his route, and I'd done parts of his route before, but this is the first time I'd ever done the whole thing. So on the third day, I'm going as hard as I can, as fast as I can. I got to within an hour of finishing it, but I still never finished it. Okay, here's how Scotty does his route. Scott always finishes his route every day. He always finishes it early. He usually goes out and helps somebody like myself who's not as fast as him, and then he goes off and he mows lawns for other people for extra money. I mean, guys, this is no joke. One day, there's a route I did commonly that at one point it bumps right up against Scott's route, and many times I would meet him there, and he'd stop, get out of his truck. Hey, Kevin, how you doing? He'd say, hey, since I'm here, let me take a couple of these next streets for you and do them as I'm moving on into my route, because they were on his way. He would take a couple of streets worth of my mail, deliver them on his way, jump back on his route, finish up, and then later this particular day I'm talking about, I'm at the end of my route, and I see this guy mowing grass. He looks familiar, and he stops his mower. He says, hey, mailman, it's Scotty. I mean, this guy would finish one of the longest routes in Charlottesville on his own, help somebody else like me, and then go mow several yards that evening, and he would still be home before I got home. Crazy. And I mean, I wasn't that bad. I wasn't the best mail carrier ever, but I certainly wasn't the worst. So Scotty pulls up to me one day at the same spot, and I'm in a different location. My street is on the other side of an intersection, and I start down the street somewhere, and I'm all the way back on this side of the intersection, and I'm in this truck, the big Ryder truck, moving van. As I told you, they kind of have an issue with a truck shortage in Charlottesville. They got all these trucks that keys don't match and keys that trucks don't match. It's insane. But Scott pulls up and he says, why are you parked all the way down here? Your first house is way down there on the left. You've got maybe 100 yards or 50 yards walk. You don't have to walk. I said, well, Scott, I couldn't park there because, look, those parking spots are taken and this truck's too big. It's 3 times the size of a regular mail truck. It always makes it difficult for me to park. And he laughed. I said, difficult to park where I'm supposed to. He laughed. He goes, look about 4 houses down. You see that big wide parking spot? And I said, yeah. He goes, you should have parked there. I said, well, it's about the same distance. What's the difference? He said, look, he goes, just because this is where we indicate you should start your loop or begin your day, and this is the point I'm making here, it doesn't mean this is where you have to begin your loop. And if you're in a bad spot with your day, that's not how you have to continue your day, if that's how it's begun. So I'm like, Scotty, I don't understand. And he laughed. He took my stack of mail. He said, okay, so here's your first house. Let's say 1001 whatever street. He goes, there's a parking spot at 1005, right? I said, yeah. He goes, okay, go flip through this mail, take 1001, 1003, because it's odds down one side, evens down the other. You go up, you cross over, you come back. He says, take all this mail for the first few houses, pull it out, put it at the back of your pile, and then start at 105. If you had to go down and park at 109, get your mail all the way through 109, put it at the back, start at 109. This seems like common sense, right, folks? What he's explaining to me, and I'd been there for months and hadn't figured this out. It's because Scott, in this regard, was more wise than me, and he helped point me in the right direction. He said, so next time, start at 109, go up, cross over, come back. You're going to have to cross over again and do 101, 103, 105, 107. Then boom, you're at your truck. He says, so this 100 yards here or 70 yards or whatever you're walking, you don't have to waste your time and waste those steps. And I'd mentioned before, I would walk up to 12 miles a day when I had this job. Well, after Scott taught me this, while he was teaching me this, I thought, wow, I'm probably walking half a mile to a mile every day I don't have to walk. Because 100 yards, and if, let's say there's 20 loops or 20 streets on a mail route, I mean, that's 1,000 yards. That's more than half a mile. 880 yards is half a mile. So through his knowledge, through his wisdom, through his past experiences, Scott taught me how to save myself half a mile a day at a minimum by simply making the choice to tweak what I had going on a little differently. Just because the ideal situation didn't happen at the beginning of that loop, that ideal situation being there was a parking spot available right there where I thought I was supposed to park, it didn't mean it could put me behind or that it should put me behind, that I had to totally change my plans for that street or that route or that day because I had a choice to actually begin that loop or that street properly and correctly and efficiently And it took Scott, somebody with experience, somebody who'd been where I was, to come along and kind of point me in that direction. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do here by pointing out, when I heard the spillway sucking, and it was my natural instinct to kind of, and this, I mean, it's human nature. I'm a pretty positive guy, but it takes work always. And here's an example. I'm not some kind of positive thinking spiritual guru that just comes out and just feels like I'm one with the universe at all times. I'm as human as anybody else. And so when I caught myself, and I consciously made the decision to start my day over in regard to my thinking, even though I'd only been out there for 5 minutes. And the sooner we catch ourselves, the better. And I did it. And I hope this story about Scott, super awesome mailman, who taught me something as simple as repositioning the stack of mail, I hope this helps illustrate with a mental image the point I'm trying to bring out here is that we can have a better day. We can start our day the right way by starting it over at any time we choose. Once we find ourselves in that point of stinking thinking, let's make the choice to start it over. And this brings me to point number 5 on my gratitude list for today, and this is no joke. I am grateful for each and every single day of life because I know that today is going to be better than yesterday, and yesterday was about as perfect as it could be. And I have faith defined as a belief in things unseen, that tomorrow is going to be better than today. And it's these little tools that allows me to believe these things. It's knowing that if I do start my day bad, or if something not so pleasant happens, I can choose to start my day over at any time I want, because it's just a 24-hour period. It's the amount of time it takes the earth to rotate on its axis. And I've seen enough of this. I've seen enough better tomorrows to know tomorrow will be better than today. Even though today's going to be great, it's going to be better than yesterday. So I'm grateful for this. This is number 5 on my list. That rounds out the list. So I hope this helps some of you. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel, Homesteading Off the Grid. Stay tuned for more, because we have big plans today to get back to work on some of these weeds. I'm excited to go down there because I get to go through my field and gather up some of my fish and put them back in the pond. So with that, I'm going to give you a parting shot of the homestead, like I always do when we have these morning rambles. I'm going to go down there and make my wife's coffee, snuggle with my son, pick up my fish, and have a better day than I did yesterday. And tomorrow's going to be better than today. And we'll see you next time.